Installation of CPU and heatsink. Let us see how to fix the processor and fan assembly to the motherboard. Attach the CPU to the motherboard. Observe the CPU socket on the motherboard. This is the socket flap that holds the processor in place. This is the clip that locks the socket flap. Release the clip by gently sliding it outwards. Now lift the flap on the socket. Observe the small triangular mark on the socket denoting pin 1 of the socket. There is a similar small triangular mark on the processor. Align both the triangular marks. Insert the CPU in the socket, keeping the pin side towards the motherboard. Press the socket flap down to fix the CPU in the socket and lock the clip. The CPU is now firmly fixed into the CPU socket. Attach the heatsink and fan assembly on the CPU. The processor works very fast, generating a lot of heat. To counter this problem, we use a heatsink. The heatsink helps absorb and release the heat, keeping the CPU at a lower temperature. The fins of the heatsink absorb maximum heat. The heatsink is provided with a fan. The fan draws away the heat. This mechanism cools the air near the CPU. The heatsink and the fan assembly have 4 screws at the corners. Align the screws with the screw holes on the motherboard. Place the heatsink over the CPU and fix it on the CPU. Connecting the heatsink to the motherboard. Observe that the CPU fan has an electrical wire ending with a small electrical connector. Attach this connector to the port marked CPU fan on the motherboard. This supplies electricity to the heat fan. Tighten the screws on the heatsink with a screwdriver. The CPU and the heatsink are now fixed to the motherboard.